My name is Colette Sinclair. I'm 34 years old, and for 7 years I had not seen a single person from my family. Then my grandmother called me on a Tuesday afternoon and told me her doctor had said months, not years. She asked me to come home one more time. 3 hours after I walked into her hospital room, my sister swept in and announced she was dragging the whole family to dinner that night to celebrate her promotion, and I was expected to smile through every minute of it. My parents lined up behind her. My aunts and uncles were already invited. My grandmother squeezed my hand and whispered, "Just one dinner, sweetheart, for me." Not one person at that table knew I had been carrying a folded letter in my laptop bag since 9 that morning. By dessert, every smile in that room would be dead. The call came at 4:17 on a Tuesday. I remember because I was staring at a site plan for the Evanston Library project, chewing the end of a red pencil, when my phone lit up with a number I had not touched in 7 years. Ohio. Grandma Margie. I picked up on the fourth ring. Her voice was thinner than I remembered. Dr. Patel said months, sweetheart, not years. I set the pencil down and watched the late Chicago sun catch on the lake outside my office windows. Which hospital? State Agnes. I'll leave Friday morning. She cried then, and I let her. After 7 years of letters and silence, this was the first time I had heard her voice in real time since the night I left Ohio. Before we hung up, she said, "Your father will call. He always does when I'm sick. Let him." Let him? I packed that night. Friday morning, I loaded one weekend bag into the back of my Volvo and drove east. Indiana passed in silence. I didn't turn on the radio. Somewhere near the state line, David texted, "You good?" "Yeah, just driving." David had been my partner for 6 years. He knew better than to ask questions before I was ready to answer them. On the drive, I kept thinking about the last time I had taken that road. I was 27 then, wearing a black dress, with an acceptance letter to the Illinois Institute of Technology folded in my purse. My parents had promised me the education fund since I was 14. $42,000, enough to start. At their 30th anniversary dinner, I had planned to tell them over dessert. Instead, my father stood up during the toast, glass in hand, and announced that my sister Brianna needed a fresh start. So they were giving her the education fund as a down payment on a new place. Then he smiled at me in front of 40 people and said, "Colette's always been the one who figures things out on her own. She'll understand." My mother raised her glass. My sister started the applause. I set down my napkin, walked out of that ballroom, and drove 400 miles that night. I never went back until my grandmother called. Street Agnes smelled like lemon cleaner and old carnations. Room 314. My grandmother looked smaller in the bed than I had prepared myself for. Silver hair loose on the pillow, ivy taped to her hand. But when she saw me, her whole face opened. "There's my girl." I sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. She asked about Chicago, about my apartment on Wabash, about the library project, about the reading room ceilings. 17 feet, I told her. Oak trusses, north-south skylights. "I Google you," she said, "every week." I laughed, and my eyes stung. Then the door opened and there they were. My mother, my father, my sister, all arranged in the doorway like they had been timing it. My mother rushed me first, all lavender perfume and tears. I did not hug her back. My father gave me a single nod. My sister came in wearing a red dress and heels, carrying a plastic cup of champagne like she owned the floor. "Dr. Patel cleared Grandma for 2 hours out of bed," she said. "So we're doing dinner tonight at the Lantern, 7 o'clock. Family and close friends. It'll be good for her." "I drove 5 hours," I said. "I came to see Grandma." My mother grabbed my hand. "Everyone already knows you're here, honey. It would be embarrassing if you didn't come." I looked at my grandmother. She patted the back of my hand once. "One dinner," she whispered. "For me." So I said yes. The house I grew up in looked the same from the curb. Same white clapboard, same hydrangeas, same porch swing. Inside, every trace of me had been sanded off. My childhood bedroom was a yoga studio now. My bookshelves gone, my drafting desk gone. A Peloton schedule hung where my Frank Lloyd Wright poster used to be. On the mantel downstairs were photos of my parents, Brianna's senior portrait, Brianna's engagement pictures. Not one of me. I noticed. I did not comment. I changed into black slacks, a white silk blouse, a black blazer, low heels. I fixed my hair, put on the silver drop earrings David had given me after we closed the Evanston deal, and slung my laptop bag over my shoulder. My mother frowned at it. "Do you really need to bring that? It's a family dinner." "Work habit." Inside the bag was a thin plastic folder. I checked it once before we left. My father drove. My mother fussed with her pearls. Brianna sat beside me in the back and spent the ride talking about her promotion, her merger, her future, the Chicago partner coming in next month, how she was basically a lock for the East Wing lead. Halfway there, my phone vibrated. An email from David. Subject line: "It's live. PR just dropped. Signed, letterheads are in your bag." I didn't open it. I already knew. The Lantern Steakhouse was the nicest restaurant in a town of 14,000 people. Brass sconces, white tablecloths, a long private table in the back corner, 14 chairs. My Aunt Patricia, Uncle Jim, Pastor Tim, Cousin Megan, the Hendersons from 2 doors down. Then a nurse wheeled my grandmother in, and the whole table made room for her. At the table next to ours sat 4 people in dark suits with a laptop open between them. I barely glanced over. Dinner started the way those dinners always did. My father stood and tapped his glass. "We're here to celebrate Brianna's new title," he said. "Some of us made something of ourselves right here at home. Not everyone had to run off to Chicago to find themselves." He raised his glass to my sister, not to me. Later, Pastor Tim leaned over and asked, gently enough, "Colette, what are you doing in Chicago these days?" "I work in architecture," I said. Brianna laughed before I finished. "Oh my God, Pastor, don't let her fool you. She does office admin at some firm. Answers phones, runs the copier. It's cute." I cut into my salad and kept eating. My mother nodded. "She's always been happier behind the scenes." Uncle Jim chuckled. Light laughter moved around the table, easy and cruel in the way family cruelty often is. At the next table, one of the men lifted his head slightly at the word architecture. I noticed. I kept my face still. Then my father announced he was updating the family trust and transferring the lake house to Brianna and her fiancé, Brett. When Aunt Patricia carefully asked about me, he said, without looking up from his steak, "Colette made her choices. The estate goes to the ones who stayed with the family." I set my fork down, folded my hands in my lap, didn't react. My grandmother's jaw tightened. Still, my sister kept going. About her promotion, about the merger, about the little Chicago firm Harlow and Reeve was absorbing. "They're lucky to be getting us," she said with a laugh. "We bring the client roster. They bring some design, prestige, or whatever." That was when I finally looked sideways. The man at the next table, silver hair, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, had a laptop open. 2 logos on the slide: Harlow and Reeve. Caldwell and Partners. Daniel Reeve. Founding partner. I had been on 6 Zoom calls with him in the last 4 months. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. I gave him the smallest nod, just enough to say, "I see you." He stood a moment later and walked toward the restroom hallway with his phone in his hand. A few minutes after that, my mother intercepted me in the corridor while I was refilling my grandmother's water. "You're sitting there like a stone," my father said, stepping in behind her. "Smile, laugh, say congratulations. Stop making this family look bad." I looked at both of them and kept my voice level. "You asked me to be quiet 7 years ago. I've been quiet." "That's the problem," he snapped. "Your silence is loud." "I'll let her finish her story," I said. He thought I was being sarcastic. I wasn't. I was being precise. By the time I got back, dessert had arrived. Tiramisu for my grandmother, chocolate cake for Brianna, and my sister, because she had never known when to stop, was still talking. "Architecture is hard," she said sweetly. "Not everyone can hack it. Colette's more of a support role person, and that's okay." Then she turned to me in front of everyone and smiled that polished, gracious smile she used when she wanted to humiliate someone without looking cruel. "What is your actual title, Colette?" My father put down his fork. "Answer your sister." My grandmother squeezed my hand 3 times under the table, the old signal, "Your turn." I looked at her. She met my eyes, clear and steady despite the hospital bracelet still around her wrist. "It's okay to speak now," she said softly. So I lifted my laptop bag into my lap and unzipped it. The sound was small. The whole table heard it. I pulled out a thin plastic folder and set it on the white tablecloth in front of me. "I should have answered the first time Pastor Tim asked," I said. "So I'll answer now." Inside were 3 sheets of heavy, watermarked letterhead. I pulled out the first page and slid it slowly across the table toward Brianna, the way you pass a contract across a conference room. Header centered. 2 logos side by side. Caldwell and Partners, plus Harlow and Reeve Architects. Official merger announcement. Brianna read the first lines. Her lips moved, then stopped. "The combined firm will be led by managing principal Colette M. Sinclair." Her face drained white. I laid the second page beside it. My bio. Headshot in the corner. Evanston Library, DuPage County Courthouse renovation. Lakeview Community Art Center. 7 years of work on 1 page. I'm the new managing principal of the combined firm, I said, steady as a meeting room. The release went public this morning at 9. I did not come here to say that. I came to Ohio to see my grandmother. If nobody had asked about my job, this folder would have stayed in the bag. My sister stared at the paper like it had turned into a snake. Then she snapped. This is fake. You printed this at Kinko's. Then call Daniel Reeve, I said. He's sitting right behind you. She turned slowly. Daniel was already standing. He crossed the 4 steps between our tables, buttoned his sport coat, and stopped beside her chair. Miss Sinclair, he said to her first, polite as winter, I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I didn't realize you and Colette were related. Then he turned to me. Congratulations again, Colette. The integration team is excited to have you in the building next month. He looked back at Brianna. I should mention that all senior director appointments are under review as part of the merger restructuring, standard procedure. We'll be scheduling one-on-ones starting Monday. Then he nodded and returned to his table. My father exploded, said I had planned the whole thing to humiliate my sister, said I ambushed her, said I had ruined her night. I stayed seated. Dad, I came here for Grandma. Brianna invited me to dinner. You told me to be quiet. I was quiet. I answered a question with a public document. My mother leaned forward, tears running into her pearls. Why couldn't you just lie, Colette, just for one night? Just say admin, say assistant, let your sister have her night. I looked right at her. Because you've been asking me to lie about myself for 7 years. I'm done. That finally killed the room. Pastor Tim stood first and apologized. Aunt Patricia came to my side and admitted they had all been told I was struggling, that I didn't want contact, that I wasn't doing well. Brianna left in tears. Brett did not follow her. My father sat down and stared at his plate like it had betrayed him personally. I knelt beside my grandmother's wheelchair. I came for you, I said. I know, she said, touching my cheek. That's why it landed. I wheeled her back to Sweet Agnes myself. That night I stayed at the Best Western instead of my parents' house. In the car, Brett texted that he was sorry. My mother called, then Brianna. I let all of it go to voicemail. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be clear about that. I felt like I had finished a very long, very quiet piece of work. Saturday morning, Brianna found me in the hospital cafeteria. No red dress, no heels, just swollen eyes, leggings, a fleece pullover, and panic. I need this job, she said. If they restructure me out, I lose everything. I took a sip of bad coffee. Brianna, I'm not your sister right now. I'm the managing principal of the firm you work for. If you want to discuss your role, email my assistant on Monday. She stared at me like I had become a stranger overnight. You're really going to do that after everything? Yes, I said. That's exactly why. Later that day, my father came into my grandmother's room in his church blazer and announced that he was removing me from the family trust entirely. Lake house, savings, property, all of it. I set down the crossword and looked at him. Dad, I was never in the trust. You told me that 7 years ago. Before he could answer, my grandmother spoke from the bed. Richard, sit down. He sat. Then she told him the house on Linen Street was hers. Always had been. My grandfather had left it to her, not to him. She was updating the will that week. The house would go to me. My house, she said. My decision. He left without closing the door. 3 days later, I sat with her on the porch swing at Linen Street, wrapped in October air and the smell of wet grass and tea. She told me something then that explained more than it excused. My father had been the scapegoat in his own childhood, broken down by a man who called him slow, soft, useless. He had sworn he would never do that to his children. And then he did it anyway. Scared people repeat what they know, she said, especially the things that destroyed them. I wrapped my hands around the mug and let that settle where it needed to settle. Sunday night I was back in Chicago, back at my desk, the Evanston drawing spread in front of me. David asked how it went. I told him, my sister works for me now. My dad is writing me out of a trust I was never in. My grandmother is leaving me her house. In that order? He said. No, I told him. In the only order that matters. Grandmother first. Monday morning, Sarah forwarded a meeting request from Brianna about her role in the new structure. I sent it straight to HR. Process was process. Family had nothing to do with it. Then my phone rang. Grandma Margie. The house on Linden is yours, sweetheart, she said. Lawyer filed the paperwork this morning. I looked out at the river, moving gray and steady through the city. Thank you, Grandma. Come home for Thanksgiving, she said. Just you and me. I'll make the sweet potatoes. Just you and me. That was enough family for one table.